Hi guys, welcome back to Lexalexus. We've got a really busy weekend of Championship football. Today I'm going to be predicting Good Friday's games. We've got 12 games to predict which will take place tomorrow. And we've got 12 games that will take place on Easter Monday. So there's going to be two very quick videos coming out regarding predicting the final couple of games in the Championship season. And we're going to start seeing some points at both ends of the table starting to be decided. As always, guys, make sure you leave your thoughts at this stage of the Championship season in the comments down below as well. And if you guys want to predict any of the games, you can as well by commenting your predictions in the comments down below. And by the end of this week, you will see an update of the Lexalexus Football Prediction League just before the final round of games. It's really interesting competition going around at the moment. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help the growth of this channel. If we can get to 50 likes, that would be amazing. Please do hit the subscribe button too. It really helps us with trying to get to 3,000 subscribers. And please also share the channel too. All these things are free to do and they really do help. But without any further ado, let's start predicting week 43 of the Championship. We start off what could be a very important game in the relegation picture. It is Derby against Luton Town. Derby just above the dotted line after drawing late on against Portsmouth. A win for Derby. They would have been in the driving seat of surviving the draw. They already would have had a lot of distance between them and Luton Town. If Luton can get a win in this game here, they can be level on points with Derby, making it very interesting, and it will drag Derby right in the conversation of them trying to survive the drop. So it feels a lot more important for Luton Town's point of view, but both Derby and Luton are fighting to survive at this moment in time. For Luton's sake, it was a very disappointing result to lose in the way that they did against Blackburn Rovers, and it was a result where, you know, Blackburn of course hadn't won before with Ishmael until that point there. It was just an inconvenient result for Luton, and with their home performances as well, it just was really a bad timing of a defeat, and it really compounded the fact that Luton are just struggling to find the ball in the back of the net. I believe they're the lowest scorers in the league now out of all Championship sides. Derby can easily get a win here. They've been really strong at home recently. But I have a sneaky feeling Luton, with their head-to-head records against sides around them, they haven't been too bad. I think this will end as a draw though, which will be very unhelpful, especially for Luton. A win is really what Luton win. They really need a win minimum to have a really strong chance of getting out. But I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw, and that will keep Derby afloat ahead of the relegation picture. But obviously that could then change if Cardiff get a good result. But they do have supposedly a tough game against Sheffield United, but I'm going to go for a draw in this game. Next up, we've got Blackburn versus Millwall. Now, it was a relief, I think, for Valérien Ismaël that they've picked up their first win as Blackburn boss against Luton Town. It has meant that Blackburn are now back within the top 10 of the Championship, and they're facing, you know, the side directly above them, Millwall. However, they are facing a Millwall side who are banging form in the moment. It was a really good win for them against Middlesbrough. It's exactly the win that they needed against another playoff rival. And I do consider Millwall to be right in the picture of the playoffs at the moment. And actually, with the fact that the team currently in the playoffs, Bristol City and Coventry, having really tough games this week, this could be a really good opportunity for Millwall to actually start being within touching distance of getting into those precious playoff places. So I do see this as a really important game. I don't think Blackburn have got a lot to play for now. Whilst it's not mathematically impossible for Blackburn to be in playoffs, I think it's too much for them to do now at this stage of the season. And I feel like they need to go into this game with a little bit of an upturn of momentum just to give their fans something and to give Ismaël just a little bit of a lift potentially going into next season, even though his future at Blackburn is not actually too convincing at the moment. So Prediction-wise, I could see this being rather competitive, but I'm going to go for a 2-1 away victory to Millwall. They're just right on form at the moment, at the perfect time of the season, and I think that form will get them 3 points here. Next up, we've got Bristol City going up against Sunderland. This is going to be a very interesting game. So obviously with Sunderland, they're in a very unique position. They've already got their playoff places secured, and it could introduce a little bit of complacency in Sunderland's recent performances, and I feel like that is exactly what we've seen. I actually think they've addressed their defence quite a fair bit better, but they have certainly not been as free-flowing and as goal-scoring as they have been at the very start of the season. Bristol City have really been punching and fighting for this place in the playoffs. It's a side that hasn't really sniffed the playoffs for a good number of years now, and they're in a really commanding position. But Bristol City have got some tough games against Leeds. So for me, Bristol City need to get a win in this game. They'll put them on 67 points. And actually, I think that could, not confirming it, but it really could give them a really solid foundation that maybe they can even take 0 points in their next 2 games and they still might be within the top 6. So I do see this game being rather important for Bristol City, more so than Sunderland. As a prediction, I think that extra motivation, and for how well Bristol City have been at Ashton Gate all season, I think they can get 3 points here. I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory to Bristol City, and that should surely give them a really, really good foundation to get into the playoffs. I think considering that the teams below them have got some really winnable games, I think a win here for Bristol City is almost apparent. A draw maybe not the worst result, but I think a win is so important here for Bristol City. Otherwise, they do have the risk of falling away and losing form at the wrong time of the season. Let me know what you think, though, of the playoff race in the comments. Next up, we've got Coventry going up against West Brom. Coventry only were able to draw against Hull City despite taking the lead in their Monday night game, and a win for Coventry would have given themselves a really, really good amount of breathing space between them and the teams around them. But it has left the playoff race pretty wide open for teams below them to potentially start trying to leapfrog them in the table. West Brom as a side, they will be one of those sides trying to chase back into the playoffs, where their form had been really, really bad, but they really responded with an important and imperative win against Watford. I think that win should have been a bit more comfortable than it should have been. They were 2-0 up at one stage and were looking very, very comfortable. They did kind of put their foot off the gas near the end of the game, but I do think there was a good statement performance from West Brom, and it does mean that they will still be fighting for those playoff places, but what has let West Brom down has been their away form. And they really need to turn that around here. But their record against Coventry has actually been pretty decent. Coventry's form has not been as strong as it has been since the last international break. It hasn't been as, streaky in terms of getting the win side of things. But they've still been competitive in their matches, and they haven't really dipped too far down with their performance levels. But I've got to say, as a prediction, I would not be surprised for a draw. And I can realistically see a draw occur here. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Coventry could easily get a rare good result against West Brom, but I just think West Brom, at this moment of time, they will be really hungry for this playoff places. And it's just a question whether if Coventry are going to be clinical enough. Personally, I think it'll end as a draw. Next up, we've got Middlesbrough going up against Plymouth. We're speaking about sides just below the playoffs, really chasing for the playoff places, and I consider Middlesbrough certainly being another one of those sides. Now, it hasn't been a good couple of games for Middlesbrough. It's been back-to-back defeats for them, and they were momentarily really pushing for playoffs, but have now fallen away ever so slightly. But they are only 3 points behind Coventry still, and I do think against this Plymouth side, who have got one of the worst array records in the league, I consider this as a really good opportunity for Middlesbrough to get themselves back into those players, or at least be within touching distance and getting back there. And what I have noticed with the stats with those sides fighting for playoffs, Middlesbrough have considerably more wins than those sides, but the thing that lets them down is that they've been losing a load of games as well. They haven't been able to turn those losses into draws, or vice versa in that regard. They're doing that more often than they need to. Plymouth got, I think, the shock of the Championship last weekend, beating Sheffield United by 2-1, and the manner in which they did it to get that comeback that late on in the game, absolute madness. I did actually predict it'd be a draw between those ones. I did fancy Plymouth to get something, but I didn't expect 3 points. I did not predict that whatsoever. But going into this game here, I think Plymouth have just shown that they can be competitive at home. They've just not found that winning formula away from it, and I do think that will cost them their league status. So if they do lose this game, it doesn't mean it's game over yet, but it will delay the inevitable, unfortunately. And but with that win, they are actually really, really close to getting out of the bottom three. They're only within 3 points, maybe 4 points, if I'm going to be honest, because of their inferior goal difference. But I do think against this Middlesbrough side, who are fighting for playoffs, I think it'll be too good for Plymouth, unfortunately. As a prediction, I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to Middlesbrough, which will certainly make the playoff race very interesting. If Plymouth get that win, that will certainly spice things up in the relegation battle. Next up, we've got Norwich going up against Portsmouth. Norwich are one of the very few sides that actually do not really have anything to play for. Whilst they're mathematically not out of the playoff race, they really need all the results to go their way from now to the end of the season. I don't think they will get playoffs. The best thing that they can hope for is maybe for a top half finish and just play with a little bit of positive momentum going into next season. It's just been too inconsistent for Norwich this season if they have been wanting to replicate last season's success of getting into the playoffs. Portsmouth, the attention is more or less on them because they are still fighting for league status. They are 4 points ahead of the relegation picture. That last minute draw against Derby has made things very, very important for them because they were momentarily one place below because Derby would have leapfrogged Portsmouth had Derby beaten them. But they're keeping a cluster of teams below them currently, and they still have got a bit of a nice cushion between now and the relegation picture. However, within Easter Monday, if they get 2 defeats, that margin could completely evaporate. So it's essential for Portsmouth to still get some results. But I do see a Norwich side who are okay at home. They can be pretty free scoring at home. Portsmouth's away record has been their kryptonite, and personally, I do think what we'll see is Norwich, being as inconsistent as they are. They lost last game, but I think that will then follow up with Norwich getting a good result at home. As a prediction, I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Norwich, and that will certainly make things a little bit nervy for Portsmouth going into Easter Monday. Next up is Preston going up against QPR. I said there were not many sides with not really anything to play for, but I think in this game we've got 2 of them. And I actually think QPR mathematically definitely cannot get into the playoffs now. Preston certainly are not really going to get there either. And I think right now they're kind of in this weird limbo state of the season now where they really don't have a lot to play for. And it's really just going into the next game and just hoping that they can try and pick up some form between now and the end of the season. But I could easily see some of these sides being a bit complacent. I think QPR have actually picked up their form ever so slightly. A good win against Oxford and then a draw against Bristol City. A really positive result, I actually think, for them. I think it's a good improvement in their recent performances. Preston were involved in a defeat against Leeds, which I'm not massively shocked about, unfortunately. I think deep down has certainly been their strong point, Preston, but I do think it just feels like to me that it'll be a draw, to be honest. I do think there have been loads of draws in the last couple of meetings between these two sides. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I just think, it could even be 0-0, but personally, I think it will be a scoring draw, and it's just really just going to be ones that you might skip the highlights for, unfortunately, because I really don't think there's really too much to play for here. Certainly a game that has a little bit more spice to it is Stoke and Sheffield Wednesday. I think this is a very important game for Stoke. They have some really tough games coming up, Stoke. They definitely have Leeds still to play. So they still have a really tough couple of games coming up. Maybe even Sheffield United as well, if I remember too. So some really tough games for the Stoke City side coming up ahead. But they got that really important win against Cardiff. It was essential that Stoke needed to get a result there, and they did. It was an own goal. It certainly wasn't a result or a goal that they will remember, but it may be a good flashpoint in their season where they feel, you know what, we now don't fear relegation anymore, and it's a really good situation for Stoke to be in. I think likewise with Portsmouth, still not mathematically safe, but I think now they are within a couple of results away of getting some good results, and certainly it was required for Stoke following the teams that they still have yet to play. Sheffield Wednesday have been on a winless run and has certainly been, a bit of a downward spiral actually in the past couple of game weeks or so, and especially since Shansiri not being able to pay his players on time. It certainly has been just a little bit, oh, here we go again, and that sort of mindset. I think their last win, can correct me if I'm wrong, was actually that 3-goal comeback against Norwich, which feels like a lifetime ago now. Now, I know Sheffield Wednesday have been better away from home. It's really been that home form that they've struggled with all season. But Stoke have picked up some good form recently. They're unbeaten in their last 4. They're facing the Sheffield Wednesday side winless in their last 6. I could see Stoke winning this one, but actually, I've also seen Stoke with their home games not necessarily picking up the best results all the time. I just have a feeling it's going to be a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw here. But a Stoke win wouldn't surprise me here. But I do think Sheffield Wednesday on their day can beat most teams. And I think that's what we'll see. I think we'll see some good moments of Sheffield Wednesday. But I think that will then counteract with Stoke's, desperation to try and avoid a drop. And I do think Stoke will, based on their performances. And I think a draw will certainly not be the most ideal situation for them, but it will certainly help with their case of escaping relegation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Next up is Swansea versus Hull City. Interesting game, I think we'll get. Swansea managed to beat Sunderland last time around. They're actually the only second side that have beaten Sunderland at home. And ironically enough, the only other side who have beaten Sunderland at the Stadium Light this season are their opponents, Hull City. So a random stat 5-4 throw in there. I think this will be interesting, but Swansea have certainly been the in-form side. They are actually in a position now where they're actually not mathematically out of the playoffs, which is strange for me to say. But I do think it is, again, too much for Swansea to do to try and get there. But their form is really encouraging me at the moment, and they could easily get a top 10 finish if they do carry on this form from now to the end of the season. But they're facing a Hull City side who are fighting for their lives. Now, again, likewise with Derby, they are just above the dotted line. They only mustered a draw against Coventry. But I've got to say, I think it was actually a positive result for the fact that they were behind in that game. Hull's home form hasn't been particularly strong all season. So to get a point at home, I actually think it's quite a decent point for Hull. Here, though, whilst Hull have been better away from home, I just cannot ignore the positive optimism around Swansea. I've heard about the Luka Modric news, and I've heard about all sorts of positive things going around for Swansea. I just think there's a feel-good factor with Swansea at the moment, and I think that will carry them to 3 points here as a prediction. I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory to Swansea. I think there's going to be a couple of really difficult things that can really stop their strife at the moment, and I do think they will carry this form from now potentially right to the end of the season, and it will be a really strong finish for Swansea. Next up is Watford and Burnley. Certainly more attention is going to be put on Burnley's game compared to Watford, but just briefly speak about them. Watford did lose against West Brom, and mathematically it's not game over for players, but I do think circumstances-wise and with the teams around them, I think that defeat against West Brom was nail of their coffin to try and get into the playoffs. I think it's going to be too much for Tom Cleverley's side to do to now get into those playoff positions. But the onus is really more on Burnley, as I said. They're on 88 points, joint of points for top of the table Leeds United. And I dare say, tough away games for both Burnley and Leeds. And we could potentially see some changes in the table with Burnley better, Leeds as a result. Burnley will be top of the league going into Easter Monday. And I do think they have been a little bit better finding the ball at the back of the net. Maybe I'll take Derby as an exception, but I can put that to a side that Derby are fighting for their lives, and understandably that's how they were going to play. I do think Watford will be a little bit more open. I don't think Watford will be going to this one trying to grind out a 0-0 draw. I don't think they're that sort of side. As a prediction, I'm going to go actually for a 2-1 win to Burnley. I do think they will concede here. I am liking a bit of the attacking talent that this Watford side have, but I do think Burnley will have enough to counteract that and pick up 3 points here. Now a game that certainly affects both sides of the table. We got Sheffield United against Cardiff. Wow, how do we pick our bones with this one? So Sheffield United have hit a rot in their form at the very worst time of the season. 3 defeats in a row. They're now on 83 points, 5 points behind the top 2. And you've got to say, if they do not pick up a result here, Leeds and Burnley could be within a win away of securing promotion. So this is a must-win game for Sheffield United, and therefore I think they could be really, really nervy. And the really bad thing for Sheffield United now is that they're going to be hoping for Burnley and Leeds to drop points, which honestly actually might not be too unrealistic with the fact that both have got reasonably tough away games this weekend. Now, Cardiff, a lot of pressure also on them as well. Big opportunity missed to not even pick up a point at home against Stoke City. I'm sorry, but Cardiff recently, in their recent head-to-head games against sides around them, I'm thinking of the likes of Luton and the likes of Stoke, both home games, 0 points picked up from those home games. Cardiff are not capitalising on those games against the teams around them, and that can cost them the league. And they're lucky in a way that Derby did not pick up 3 points against Portsmouth, because the gap between them and getting out of the bottom three is still only 1 point. And they could, if Luton get a good result, could find themselves actually in a decent position where they could still be ahead of Luton and also get out of the bottom three. So Cardiff are certainly relying on results, but they certainly need to do a lot more for themselves. They're on the winless run at the moment, and Cardiff need that win ASAP. As a prediction here, I think it's actually going to be low scoring. I think both sides will be incredibly nervous, but I think it's going to be Sheffield United that nick it. I just think they've got more options going forward. I'm going to go for a 1-0 win to Sheffield United. I don't think they'll make it easy for themselves, but I think they'll get the job done, and that will certainly be a damaging defeat for Cardiff. Our final league game to predict is Oxford and Leeds. What a win it was for Oxford last weekend against Sheffield Wednesday to win again away from home, who are a side that actually were really struggling to pick up a win away from home at all. They've won certainly a lot more games on the road since Gary Rowett has come in. It's been a bit of a masterstroke from the point, because now they're looking safe. They're not mathematically safe, but I think a good result here, if they can get now into the 50-point mark, which they will if they do beat Leeds, I think they'll be safe. And I really do think even a draw will certainly give them a good amount of distance between them and the bottom three. So unbelievable work from Oxford and Gary Rowett, and I do think they'll be right up for this game. Leeds, of course, there's so much pressure on them, whilst I arguably say for Oxford the pressure has died down a bit with the fact that they've picked up those results when they've needed to get themselves out of the really lower parts of the championship table. So when Leeds are under pressure, you can see vulnerability, and that's what we have seen from Leeds. They have picked up their form in a really crucial time of the season. They're now on 88 points, top of the league because of goal difference. I do think if they drop points here, it's not the end of the world, and I do think that other games Leeds between now and the end of the season are pretty winnable. I do think this is actually their toughest test, personally for me, between now and the end of the season. As a prediction, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. I mean, Leeds have got professional away wins, recently against Middlesbrough, of course, but I just think Oxford have been really difficult to break down, and I do think Oxford can get a result. And I think a good result for Oxford, they can go through the motivation knowing that a good result should surely give them championship survival. But let me know what you think too in the comments. So there you have it, guys. That wraps up my Good Friday championship score predictions. Apologies on the late list of the video. I'm hopefully going to give you guys more than enough time to leave your predictions. As always, if you guys want to leave your predictions for the Let's Football Prediction League, just leave them in the comments down below, and I'm always intrigued to see your thoughts and see your thoughts on interpretations of the game. It's part of the joy that I'm still getting doing this content. If you guys like what you see, please smash the like button. It really does help. Please do hit the subscribe button too, and please also share the channel as well. They are free to do, and it really helps. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary for signing this video. And as always, I'll see you guys soon and enjoy your Easter weekend. Take care, everyone.